Welcome back. While Congress was struggling with health care here in Washington, President Obama was in Russia, the G-8 summit in Italy, squeezing in visits to the Vatican and Ghana before returning to Washington. Bloomberg's Hans Nichols has been with him and joins us now from Italy. And with me here in the studio is Bloomberg's Mike Tackett. Hans, the president traveled some 15,000 miles, several continents. You were with him. Wrap up the trip. What was the lead? Any big accomplishment?
Well, the lead is that L'Aquila is picturesque, but not pretty enough to induce the leaders to overcome their differences. This is a city that was ravaged by an earthquake in April, and the same fault lines, a lot of fault lines, were evident here in the past few days. And that continues to be the split between countries that arrived in previous centuries and countries that want to arrive in this one. And particularly on climate change, there wasn't really an agreement from the emerging economies to go ahead and reduce their emissions by 2050. Now, the developed nations, the industrialized nations, they did agree to something, not that much, and it was only long-term 2050, nothing more immediate. 2020 was the other deadline. Copenhagen, those big talks in December, are in doubt. That's what advocates for greenhouse gas reductions are saying.
Hans, David Axelrod and his National Security Advisor Jim Jones were with the president. Rahm Emanuel was not, as were not some other top advisors. Why?
Healthcare and energy. On energy, even before we landed here in Italy on Air Force One, Robert Gibbs was downplaying the importance of climate change at this summit, saying the real action is back on the Hill. That's true of energy. That's also true of healthcare. Rahm and other aides like Jim Messina, they wanted to be back in D.C. working the Hill, in the Senate in particular, where all the action really was this week.
Was the always shy Mr. Emanuel active on the home front?
He was very active. In fact, in the evenings he was active. He was up talking to the leadership in both the House and the Senate, and I think this going forward, he's going to be intimately involved with all the details and all the negotiations.
Probably has to be, Mike. Domestically, this Obama trip, it seems to me, really didn't play that big. It was overshadowed by Michael Jackson's death and Sarah Palin's resignation.
Well, it's hard to compete with that, isn't it?
It is,
I mean,
yeah.
The second coming of something. I don't know what it was, but you know, the president will also always have the opportunity to shape the agenda, and when he comes back, he's going to put himself foursquare out on this. We saw in his news conference that health care remains his #1 priority. He'll keep pushing that.
Hans, Putin and Obama. When Putin met with Bush, they looked in each other's soul or whatever. It ended up not counting for a lot. Can you size up the Obama-Putin early relationship?
Yeah, well, it was a chess match, and the opening gambit from Obama was to meet in the morning, which for Putin, a night owl, wasn't what he would prefer. Of course, Putin had the territory. He picked the location, his dacha, that's a Russian summer house outside of Moscow. But when they got down into discussing things, Obama did most of the listening. The first question he asked, how did we get here? Putin responds with an hour-long answer, litany of complaints. Now, the president didn't really think that Putin's argument was irrational. He was stressed that it was irrational. It was rational. He thought of it more like an opposing legal brief, not something from a crazy, deranged KGB agent. So the White House think that there's room for this relationship to mature and progress, but they say it's in the early stages.
Hans, you earlier talked about the climate change being a bit anticlimactic, not that much being done. There also was a debate over economic stimulus in Rome, as well as the debate that takes place back here in Washington. How did that turn out?
Well, it's hard to say because I don't speak Summitese. You almost need a different language here to parse all the documents, the communiques, the directives. But people that do speak the language, they can translate. And they say that on climate change, not much, but on the economy, there was basically punted. They really didn't do anything. What they said was, yes, the global economy is still in danger. Countries can go ahead and prepare plans to get out of their stimulus spending, but they can't put them into place yet. Now, one thing Obama did stress privately with leaders is that countries shouldn't expect the United States to be the engine of recovery in terms of consumer spending. That consumer spending and the way that Obama envisions the new American economy will not be the largest percentage as it has been in the past. That's bad news for the exporting countries like Germany and China.
Mike, at home, Obama is on the defensive with his $787 billion stimulus package, and unemployment keeps rising.
It's either too big, it's too small. The competing tensions, though, are deficits as far as the eye can see versus an unemployment rate that's going to be 10%. So it's tough to reconcile, those 2 points. if you're going to argue for more stimulus.
And would you think the administration will come back with a second stimulus package, or is because of that tension point, does that make it almost impossible?
I think they're thinking sequencing here, and the answer to the deficit is actually health care. They want to get health care done first. They want to see what savings they can rest in health care. After health care, then they can argue about a second stimulus. No way they want to go to the American taxpayer and say, we need more money, when they can't prove that this stimulus has worked.
Hans, on Friday, the president met with the Pope. Any political implications?
Oh, probably on the margin some, but look, Catholics supported Obama by 54%. Having a meeting with the Pope, and especially coming as it does with the papal encyclica on the need for less greed and more financial regulations, that allows Democrats to say that that the Catholics and Democrats are a little more in line. But the real hot button issue is still abortion. That's where the passions really run fiery, and I don't see much of a change there. And analysts I've talked to here, they say the same.
Mike, I agree with Hans, but I do think that encyclical, which is really a remarkably liberal left-wing economic treatise, does give Democrats something to talk about other than abortion and some of the issues that bedevil them with the church leadership in America.
Yeah, it's sort of the old idea of the just living wage, and you'll actually hear some conservative Republicans really talk about that being an important thing. But now the Democrats can say they have the backing of the Vatican, the backing of the Pope, that there's a social dimension to this, that it's not just about trying to re-engineer the economy.
That document really is a remarkable one, whether you agree with it or not. Hans Nichols, I want you to get some rest over there in Italy. I know it's hardship duty. We look forward to seeing you when you get back. Mike Taggart, thank you for being with us.